This week on the Toilet Paper Diaries, it's all about the boy who cried wolf. Let me explain. Are we living in an age of mistrust? So is every news article based on either disinformation or misinformation? We're going to lift the lid of current big stories and share a historical view of how we're just repeating ourselves from the past. We've always had big whoppers in history, and there's a huge whopper right now coming up for you on the Toilet Paper Diaries.
Dave, could you believe that there's a story which is actually topping what we were talking about last week?
There's very few stories that could have been bigger than the things that we've been recently talking about. We could have had, I don't know, Justin Bieber goes to have a sex change. We could have had the Pope decides to shoplift in the supermarket and gets caught with like bananas or something. But no, that would have been an easy let off. This one is real. And what is it, Ernesto?
It is incredible. On Friday morning, I was just about to go to bed when I received a tweet from President Trump saying that he had actually tested positive for COVID-19. And this was completely shocking because we were really ready to prepare this session about the debate. Obviously, that completely disappeared. I mean, it was just insane what has happened in the past week. And I wonder what's going to happen next week. It just gets crazier and crazier.
Directly. Mr. Trump sent you a tweet direct. You're on a first tweet basis. Or was it a general tweet?
It was a general tweet, but of course, I just got it seconds after he received it because, of course, I am following him there in Twitter, and instantly I received it. And I almost fell off my chair. I mean, with the time difference, I immediately contacted you, and you were not available because it was your free day. And it was a very, very shocking story. So at the very beginning, you go like, "Oh my God!" I mean, we made a special report, and we were saying, well, this was more or less how people should have felt when they heard that President Kennedy was shot, or when you were. When 9/11 also was there, or when Princess Diana was there. I mean, for me, it was a shocking news. I do not know how you felt.
Yeah, I was shocked that it had happened, but at the same time, I'd been waiting for this to happen ever since the Tulsa rally. Now, I'm not saying, as I say, we're neutral on this. I don't choose a side, whatever my politics actually are when I'm broadcasting. But this is, for me, one of those things you're waiting to say, hold on, if this is a real virus and the whole world is in lockdown and you're in denial, at some point, it's going to catch up with you. And it's only a numbers game. It's got to happen. You can't deny nature and science by deciding I'm going to tell it no, because it's not listening.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a case of it happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were immediately afterwards. I mean, I went to sleep, and when I woke up the next morning, there were thousands of memes, and we're going to see a few here on the screen while I am actually mentioning this. I mean, from Dr. Fauci saying, "Well, I told you so," to this is a weird turn, where suddenly everything turned into the craziness of and this is my natural way of thinking was, oh my goodness, I mean, what's going to happen? This is exactly, I went to bed still thinking, oh, this is really shocking. When I woke up in the morning, everything was into the completely different way of thinking that this didn't really happen, that this was a complete made up story. The hashtag that was actually trending on Twitter was "the president's lying." And you go like, holy moly. I mean, it is really weird. And this is exactly what you were saying about Cry Wolf, because in the fable from Aesop, this shepherd boy is saying, well, he's saying to the people in the village, the wolf is coming, the wolf is coming, the wolf is coming. and it never comes. So it gets to the point that they don't care, and then afterwards the wolf arrive and they actually eat the sheep. And this is exactly how people are feeling. They do not believe that Trump is having the virus.
I think it actually ate the little boy as well, but I can't remember because I was very small when I read the story. But you're absolutely right. And here's the thing. I mean, Trump's entire campaign has, and not campaign, his entire time in office has been based on a combination of spin. Fake news means that you throw everybody off guard, and you do it from a position of being an authority. So therefore, it's the media versus the person who they're going to be reporting on, and you set that battleground going straight away. And so, if you get enough people interested in your way of thinking, they will start to believe that maybe you're completely right and that everybody else is completely wrong because they have to take a stand. And as that happened, it's gone on for ages and ages with policies and so on. And I've got to say, with full honesty, I've admired the way he's managed to get away with so much. Fact checkers have said 20,000 lies have been the amount to date. 20,000 lies. I couldn't even keep an eye on one. If it was me, I'd get caught out. But this has been something that's been going on for such a long time. What it does is it really changes the reality around any story. Yeah. So we're talking now, what, a week and a bit since we found out about Donald Trump, and there's still a little bit inside us that goes, is it real or is it not real? Is it part of a plan? Just like the coronavirus is a scam or a hoax, which is what we're led to believe. Is this a plan to do the Hail Mary, as you mentioned before, where he suddenly comes back and goes, gotcha? We would never say that. He said, I've recovered. It's nothing. But there's too many other people who have gone down with it for that to be the case.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think this is a very important part. I mean, we are always talking about the importance of trying to see context and content. And I think you really got it right, because I think what we have to do is we have to think, how is this going to be interpreted in history? I mean, if we will be reading this exact episode in history, how it would be represented? So let's just try to, before we go into playing with the time frame between back and past and future, let's just try to come up with the straight facts, which I think is very important. So they announced that the president of the United States and the first lady are tested positive with COVID. Immediately after, we start seeing that it's not only him, and this is exactly what we didn't really know what was going to happen. If there's a ton of people which are also infected, it might be actually true. I mean, it has to be true, because I don't think, I mean, the more people that you involve in a conspiracy, the more difficult it will be to actually keep it straight.
What we're saying is, because it might be a plan to divert everybody from the tax news and the white supremacy news that was hurting him in the polls. He wanted a sympathy vote. Yeah. By saying, look at me, I'm ill. That's how those things were looking like they could be played.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because of course this came just after the debate, which was labeled as the worst debate in history. And that, of course, it's something that would have happened. But yeah, now we know, I mean, that Governor Chris Christie, now we know that this lady McEnany, Kellyanne Conway, we know the president of the Notre Dame University, all these people that were in the nomination day on the Rose Garden there in the White House for Amy Coney Barrett. There were something like about 12 or 15 people. There he was also the vice president. And I mean, there's just been more and more, and we do not know. I mean, there's going to be coming more as we possibly speak. We're going to be hearing about more people. So is it true? I don't know. So, I mean, we cannot really judge, but if we try to put it into perspective, let's try to see how people analyze this. And this, I think, is very important. There's two very important clips that I want to show. First of all, I like to show this clip from Jake Tapper. Yes, of course, you might say, well, this is biased because he's CNN. But what I think is very interesting is that every single thing that he's saying is facts. Let's have a look.
Many Americans are likely feeling both sympathy and anger today, emotions that don't necessarily mix well. Sympathy for all of those suffering, including President Trump, who remains at Walter Reed Medical Center. But also anger, because so much of all this pain could have been avoided. So many of us since March have been doing everything we can to preserve the health of not only ourselves and our families, but our communities, our neighbors, you. Social distancing, wearing masks, holding events remotely. Weddings have been canceled, jobs lost. Children are missing out on in-person education and their ability to see friends. It's a real crisis. It's going to leave scars. 208,000 Americans have died. Thousands of Americans have lost loved ones without being able to properly mourn or even say goodbye. But we're in the middle of a once-in-a-century pandemic. Health experts say this is what we need to do in order to get to the other side. Regardless of the sympathy we may feel, we also know the president has been undermining these efforts, expressing disdain for health regulations and those who abide by them. Do you remember this?
Can you take it off because I cannot hear you?
I'll just speak louder, sir.
Oh, okay, good. You want to be politically correct. Go ahead.
No, sir, I just want to wear the mask.
Politically correct. The Americans who don't listen to science or medicine, who think masks are too intrusive, who pack bars, who willfully risk spreading the virus, you are making it worse for all of us. You are extending how long this pandemic will last. And it is tragic to say, many, if not most of you, are taking your cues from the leader of the free world. Last weekend, at an event held both inside and outside, but with no masks required and no distancing, President Trump introduced his Supreme Court nominee. So far, at least 8 attendees of that event have tested positive for the virus. Look at Senator Mike Lee at this event. My God, how are future generations going to try to make sense of these images of the Republican leaders of the nation acting like this during a once-in-a-century pandemic with more than 200,000 Americans dead? I wish every one of these leaders, Senator Lee, President Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Chris Christie, I wish you all a full and speedy recovery. But do you not see? It's not just through failed leadership or setting bad examples. You are all now literally risking spreading the virus yourselves. The president and his team have been behaving as if the pandemic is over. This callous indifference to the well-being of the citizens the president swore to protect, it's no longer just theoretical. It's no longer, well, they might get the virus. After finding out Hope Hicks, a top aide with whom the president had been in close contact, after learning she was sick with the virus and actually showing symptoms, the president flew to a fundraiser in New Jersey and mingled. Did anyone in the White House or on the Trump campaign consider at all the housekeepers and bartenders at Bedminster, the naval aviators who flew them there on Air Force One, the young interns or old donors with whom the president came in contact? Anyone? Anyone at all? I wish you all health and recovery and a long life. But we have to note the tragedy here. It is horrible and awful and profound. Sick and in isolation, Mr. President, you have become a symbol of your own failures. Failures of recklessness, ignorance, arrogance. The same failures you have been inflicting on the rest of us. Get well, and please, for the rest of us who don't get to go to Walter Reed, get well and get it together.
So there we go, Jake Tapper sharing his spin on everything. And watching Jake Tapper there, it really looked like he'd been waiting for a long time to get it out of his system. As he goes bang, 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 bang with all the different bits and pieces, he feels like it feels like he had a notepad where he'd been making notes for the last 3.5 years and just wanted to share it. So I feel that as if I was his therapist, I'd say, well done, Jake. You can lie down now. You can have a nice warm glass of milk and a biscuit, and let's see what's on Netflix. Oh, the news. Should we watch CNN or Fox? Which do you prefer?
Yeah, it's, I mean, we have also seen in Fox, I mean, there's been a lot of confusion because what is going on, we have not really any clue. Now, the reaction from people has been very interesting. Once again, we get the people which are saying, you know, this is a lie, this is going to be a spin that he's going to do to try to win the elections, blah, blah, blah. Now we see what Biden has done. And I very honestly, regardless of the political beliefs, regardless of whatever, he has done something very noble, which I possibly, if I would be an American, if I will be somebody which is involved into this election, I would say I disagree. However, that just shows you the kind of person that Joe Biden is.
He's taken the higher ground. He's basically decided that if they're going to go low, we're going to go high. So what he's done effectively is stop anti-Trump negative adverts during the time when he's in hospital. And he's sent messages saying, I hope you recover, as Obama said that to him as well, and sent messages. But meanwhile, the Trump campaign hasn't pulled a single ad. It's still blaming everything on Obama and Biden and Harris, and they're still ultra nasty. And I think history will show at the end of it who was correct. For me personally, battle and war is only shown by the end result.
Yeah.
So you can be a noble loser, but you're still a loser.
Mm-hmm. And this is where I think it's incredibly interesting, because right now there's a pack that is called the Rebellion Pack that jumped into the protection, and it says, well, you know, Biden has taken the noble ground, but we are going to continue with it because, of course, we are not going to unilaterally unweapon ourselves. We have to fight. And then they created this ad, and I think this ad is just hurting tremendously, because what is happening, it's really saying exactly what most people are feeling. Have a look.
Before Trump got coronavirus, he didn't wear a mask. His family didn't wear a mask, and his staff didn't wear a mask.
Can you take it off because I cannot hear you?
I'll just speak louder, sir.
Oh, okay, good. You want to be politically correct. Go ahead.
Because then it only affected you. They told you it was a hoax. They told you to go to work. And they told you to sacrifice Grandma for Wall Street.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is.
Now that Trump has contracted coronavirus, all of a sudden, they're all wearing masks. Because now it affects them. They didn't give a damn as this plague upended your life, destroyed your job, and kept your kids out of school. But as soon as it came to their doorstep, they finally care. Isn't it time you had a president who cared about you instead of just looking out for himself?
Yeah, it's really stunning to see that. And I think that you'd have to be really hard-nosed to not see some kind of hypocrisy, or at least something there that makes you think maybe it shouldn't have been said the way that it was, or enforced or publicized the way that it was publicized. Can I just say, though, by no point in this are we taking any joy in anybody being infected or being ill, or we wish everybody a swift and safe recovery. That's not the point. This is literally about the politics and the fact it was hypocrisy, not about the people. We don't want anybody to die again, whoever they are, because of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
So that being said, it's interesting to see how people are stepping into the breach and actually standing up and being counted. Now, here's a question for you, Ernesto. Do you think, because right now, as we speak, it's still very tight-lipped of people saying, I'm not saying anything, but do you think this would be the straw that breaks the camel's back of moderate Republicans who didn't buy in but were too scared to say anything with racism, with tax, with many of the other things? Do you think that they will turn around and say, right, I'm going to save myself and I'm going to say what I see?
It already happened. It already happened. And I mean, once again, we are not political analysts. We are not, but I have always been working with trends. I am a trend hunter. I know very well what's going on. And right now, by putting all the dots together, I honestly think that what is happening right now has already costed him the presidency. I don't see any way out. Now, he's the master of spin. He, as we were mentioning earlier, he is the number one spin doctor in the entire world. He is treating the whole thing as game show, as we were mentioning earlier, with even going out in the car that, he did on Sunday, that he suddenly sent the video and then he went out in his, do you understand how difficult it is to actually get a motorcade to transport the president? And he just decided just to go there to actually show that he was there and he was still strong.
Well, it's incredible because it literally, if you were to write a movie about this, you wouldn't have to embellish a single thing. Everything was in real life, as you would have waited for somebody to walk through the door and say the famous lines. Somebody walks through the door and says famous lines. Yeah. It literally is exactly as you would expect it, but it's not how you'd expect it. It's worse and better and oh my gosh, which is why so many people around the world are completely enthralled in this particular reality TV show called America over the last 3.5 years. Whatever their side is, you can't take your eyes off it.
Yeah. And you know what is very interesting? Obviously the narrative has changed tremendously. And once again, it's just observations. There's no reason for us to take one side or the other. It's just simple observations, which I think they're basically true. Right now, the narrative in social media, the narrative in the newspapers, everything has completely changed from last week till now. And having that seen, that's why it's not that difficult to say that the writing is on the wall. And we're still some days before the election. However, it is. We just have to see how this is going to be unveiling.
Well, I'm not going to count it out yet because I think that'd be a very foolish thing to do. I do get your sentiments. And I've got to say with full honesty that if it was the other way around and we were watching Biden's people or whichever Democrat was saying things, look at the last big scandal that I can think of was probably Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. Mm-hmm. I would be front and center saying what I think of it in the same terms as we're doing, talking about this. This isn't about the politics. It's just about literally seeing what you see and calling it as you see it.
100%. This is about context and content. We're trying to basically explain how we feel about this, but now in a more humorous way. Let's just think that we are going to make a comedic movie out of this, because I'm sure that the comedians are going to have, not because of the disgrace of what is going on, but because of the craziness of how things are going. Who would be the right person to actually be coming up in the next comedy blockbuster to talk about all these crazy things?
If you're going to talk about the craziness of America right now, no American could do it because they'd get into so much trouble because it'd either have to be one side or the other side. You'd have to be somebody from a neutral country, possibly a country that doesn't have an alliance with either side of the political spectrum in the US, and maybe one that is so small that nobody would have a problem with them doing it. Why, do you have somebody in mind? Who's done something then?
Well, I think it will be somebody from the Honorable Republic of Kazakhstan. BORAT is back!
Fantastic. Well, I've got to say, when I watched the first BORAT movie, I cried and I couldn't believe what I was watching in front of me. But like any good train crash, you can't take your eyes off it. And I have no doubt that this one will be the same. Shall we have a look?
Let's have a look.
BORAT! What do you say? No, it's not me.
BORAT, come back!
People may recognize my face. I would need disguises.
This man is sex criminal?
No, no sex criminal.
I will take this to be a fat like American man. Yeah? This is a good one. I need dress with real sexy peels.
This is a bag that just goes over the dress.
They're nice.
I really like this.
Where is everybody?
They're wanting everybody to quarantine so they don't spread this virus.
Could I stay in your home?
I hope quarantine never ends.
What is more dangerous, this virus or the Democrat?
Democrats.
Democrats.
And while the risk of coronavirus remains low, as the president said yesterday, we're ready for anything.
Michael Penis, I brought the girl for you.
Borat's subsequent movie film.
You fist me. Now I fist you? What do you prefer? You fist me or I fist you?
Same time.
Fist each other. Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, I love it. I mean, there's so many funny clips there, and obviously we were not able to show you the full clip because of copyright issues. But I mean, it just cracks me up. I think it's fantastic, and I think this is exactly what we need. I mean, we needed a little bit of humor just to live with all this craziness which is happening right now.
I agree, and it really needs to have somebody neutral who's calling it like it is, because otherwise you've got some skin in the game, which makes people not believe what it is that you're saying. But if anybody can rescue sanity, it's Borat, and I never thought I'd use those words in the same sentence in my entire life.
Yeah, you know what I think it's amazing is how were they filming? Because actually it is happening now. I mean, a lot of this stuff which are actually they're talking about in the movie is so up to date, which is really incredible.
Well, Sacha Baron Cohen has been an expert at improvisation, so you can throw him in front of any situation. This is how his comedy works best, with real people. When he was Ali G, when he was Bruno, of course, when he was Borat, it was always about the reactions of people around him when he sets them up. It's almost like being a hypnotist or being a magician. You have everything the way that you need it to be, and then the reactions of people around it is ultimately what drives the comedy, not him, even though he's brilliant at Borat. And with that, it's just incredible to look at the way that people's reactions around him fall into place. I wonder how much of it ends up on the cutting room floor and how much of it is just, right, stop, we've got this.
Yeah.
Do you remember that situation where he sang the national anthem at the rodeo and almost got himself shot?
I do, yeah. That was incredibly funny. But there's so many clips from Borat. And for example, right now my very favorite on this clip is this thing that he brings this girl to Mike Pence. I think that's so funny.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the full movie to find out what happens next. But whatever happens, it's worth it. He's such a talented guy. And I tell you what, it's a shame he didn't play Freddie Mercury, because he would have been perfect as Freddie Mercury. I did enjoy the movie. I thought that the guy who played Freddie was perfect, especially the Live Aid bit, which was just one of the best recreations of a musical event I've ever seen in my life. But Freddie Mercury is Sacha Baron Cohen when you just stare at him doing his stuff. And he could have carried it off brilliantly. But as a guy is a genius, what can you say? I look forward to seeing that movie. But here's the thing about life. You can only read life backwards, because if you look at what's coming up, you can never expect the twists and turns. And Sacha Baron Cohen playing Borat is exactly what you've seen with the spin that's been following us in the news. Yeah. But this isn't new. This has always happened.
Before we go into our next segment, let me just tell you something very interesting, because I think the reason why we're bringing Borat and the reason why we're talking about Borat is because it became that clip that you just saw became an internet sensation. It became the most watched video in YouTube for about 3 full days. It has millions and millions and millions of views. So obviously, I think this is something that we are all really getting into, which I think it's a very interesting thing. And I think this is just not something that we can say, well, we can just look forward, but we can just see what has happened in history. Dave, you prepared an amazing section on history, so that we can compare what's going on with some elements in history. So possibly you can enlighten us with this great information.
Yeah, in no particular order. This is not new. I went through my history books and looked at some of the things that have happened where people thought one thing was going to happen and something else happened, and it all comes full circle. Because today's episode is really about the boy that cried wolf, but this isn't the first time we've seen it. When Trump tells everybody coronavirus is a hoax and ends up catching it himself, This is by no means an isolated incident. Let's take a look and go back in time, and I'll share with you, because I'm a big history buff, Ernesto, some of the times that this has been something that came back to bite everybody. Let's look at the breaking out of World War I. It was caused by an incident.
Franz Ferdinand.
The assassination. Sorry?
Franz Ferdinand, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand.
Yeah, not the band, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was actually on a parade. Now, there was a group who were put together called the Black Hand, and they were going to make sure that they assassinated him for political reasons in Sarajevo. Now, what happened was a guy threw a grenade. It missed Ferdinand. It hit the car behind and blew them up. So a load of people went to hospital, and of course, the Archduke escaped. Now, the guy who was in charge of everything had enough. He thought, oh my goodness, this is the end. So what he did was he panicked, took a cyanide pill, and threw himself in a nearby river. Now, the cyanide pill didn't kill him. It just made him sick. So he puked up all the rest of the cyanide tablet. The river wasn't deep enough to drown in. It was only about 6 foot, so it probably went up to about his neck. And so he got out pretty easily, but then got caught. Now, the rest of the guys were going, oh my goodness, this is just terrible. I can't believe that this was the case. And they went for a coffee, sat in a restaurant, and just saying, you know, let's just have some food and we'll review what we need to do next. At that moment, Franz Ferdinand decided to go to the hospital on a detour from a normal route to check on how people were. And it took him past a restaurant where the rest of the gang were waiting, who pulled out the guns and shot him in the neck. And that killed him. And that was the incident that started the First World War. Now, here's the thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation where you're driving the car and your missus has told you you've gone the wrong way? And you don't want to start an argument, just go, even though you know you're going the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, very interesting. The same thing happened in Colombia in times of Pablo Escobar. They were also, I mean, there were several chances that they could have stopped the whole thing, and because of coincidences like this, it just didn't happen. So I think it's just very interesting. So once again, how can we compare this to what is happening right now?
Well, you got to look at the fact that you can't write life like this. You just got to look backwards and see how all the threads come together. Because this particular incident was enough to spark the war to end all wars. Now, remember, that was the war that went on from 1914 through to 1919. Yeah. In the middle of which was the Spanish flu. 100 years ago is the coronavirus part 1 that killed hundreds of millions of people around the world. Mm-hmm. So it all ties in with right now as well.
Yeah.
But then to end it all, so go on.
No, and what happened in that specific time in the Spanish flu, it was actually not Spanish. It was just here in Kentucky or in Oklahoma or whatever. And then the soldiers that were sent there were the ones that triggered the whole thing in Spain. So it's just very interesting to see how history is read from you can see it backwards. That's the only way to see it. So interesting, very interesting.
And as you rightly say, it wasn't the Spanish flu at all, mm-hmm. but it has been called that forever. And I'm sure Spain does not like the fact that people talk about 100 million people dying because of Spain when Spain had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, same thing here. I mean, they're saying the Chinese plague and the Chinese plague. And yeah, it might have started there, but the ones that, I mean, right now, for example, how is the United States going to be judged? Because of course, it's a country that has the most deaths and I mean, it's just interesting to see how things are going to be playing.
Absolutely. But when we look back at it in 100 years, Ernesto, they won't be saying that the Toilet Paper Diaries had anything to do with this. So at least we can rest quite happy that we are ignored for the madness that's happening right now. So let's take the next thing that happened, which was the war to end all wars from 1914 to 1919. The Spanish flu, not from Spain, happened during that time. But when it came to an end, finally, they had the Treaty of Versailles, where everybody was brought around to settle all the world's differences and decide what's the best way to carve up the world and make it better for all the victors. So it was all about spin. It was all about keeping the victors happy. And as they did it, this was a war to end all wars with a treaty to end all treaties. What we didn't realize was what a mess that was going to be. Within another decade or so, you had the Second World War, which was even bigger and even worse. They made such a botch of the Middle East, not thinking about cultural considerations, religion, the background and the borders of everywhere, which is a battle and an ongoing issue that even now in these times, 100 years later, we're still suffering from. Plus also Woodrow Wilson, who effectively was in Donald Trump's seat, or he's in Woodrow Wilson's seat, you choose, denied Vietnam self-determination from France. And so that years later, decades later, turned into the Vietnam War, which ultimately America got into again, and that didn't pan out particularly well for them. So the treaty that was there to put an end to all wars was exactly the piece of paper that started a ton more.
Yeah.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, this is one of those things that you say, well, you know, I'm gonna take a decision which is gonna benefit me right now, but it's gonna possibly create a huge chaos. Have we been living in those circumstances recently?
We always have, but most of the time people don't know because it's like a fish swimming around the world looking for water. Where's this water thing I've been told about? Just like Nemo. And the fact is you're in it. We're too close to it to be able to see how it happens.
Yeah, I was reading a very, very interesting metaphor, a very interesting example of what they were saying. Well, you know, if you take black ants and red ants, put them inside a vase or a jar, and you and if you just put them inside the jar and don't do anything, they're going to be friendly to each other. Everything is going to be fine. But if you take the same red ant and black ant, put them in a jar or put them in a whatever it is and shake the jar and then put them there, guess what's going to happen? They're going to start killing each other. And this is exactly what's going on. I mean, it's not about people living together and how they're doing it. It's about the person that actually shake the jar. And this is exactly what it is. I mean, every time that you see something so that you will be able to put it into context, you need to think, well, who is shaking the jar before you can actually figure out what is going on? Because this is exactly what happens in the Treaty of Versailles. This is very similar to what you were saying.
And are they crying wolf? And is it fake news? And is it disinformation or misinformation? These all have to be told. And also when you talk about ants, did you know that there's a place, I think in America, where you've got two sets of ants from two different tribes, and there's millions of them that are meeting on a corner, killing each other. And what you've got is this strain of ant that comes out of Argentina, I believe, and it came over in a boat. And it's like a monster, super hard, super nutty ant that just kills every other ant. Nothing else, just kills every other ant. And they started growing and breeding. And so they're basically wiping out all the other ants. But there's one place, I think it's in America, we have to check on it, where there's a corner of the street where they're fighting nonstop, these two sets of ants coming together. That sounds familiar. And it might be the only proper war that's happening in the world right now. Thank goodness.
Well, that reminds me also, I think you also have it somewhere there as an example, so possibly you can talk about it. What happened with the Black Plague and the rats?
I was going to say that this is a classic story of long before our time, long before anyone's time. Take yourself back to Europe. And what you had during the 14th century was everybody was so, I mean, this is again fake news. The religious people were saying cats are in league with the devil. What? Yeah, cats are in league with the devil. Kill all the cats. So they did. They went around slaughtering cats left, right, and center, believing that cats are in league with the devil. Now, as a dog person, I still think they were right. Cats are in league with, no, I'm joking, that's not right. So what they did was kill all the cats so they could get their hands on because they wanted to prove this point. But what they didn't realize was that the rats were going to cause the Black Death. So the Black Death then started wiping out everybody as rats went crazy, biting everybody. And it's actually the fleas on the rats that went out and spread the plague. Now, the thing is, it would have happened anyway. But if it had cats, your average cat can kill 50 rats. So all those cats they killed would have been the best line of defense. So in the same way as if you're a fireman and you're fighting forest fires, you can stop the fires spreading by cutting down a load of trees to make sure that it doesn't jump. By having the cats there, they could have stopped a lot of that Black Death with the rodents who were breeding and finding more. They were eating from the dead bodies and so on. Maybe cats could have stopped it, but they clearly didn't. So there we go. It's not the first time this has happened. But sometimes it happens in a good way. So let me give you an example, and we can all give thanks to exactly how this happened. Let's take ourselves back to something that was not one of America's proudest moments, but it is a true story. And this is a real life story of Squanto. Now, Squanto, or Tisquantum, as he was known, was captured as a Native American by explorers around the year of 1590 and taken to Europe as a slave. Now, he escaped and spent the next 20 years or so earning money and doing the best he could to get back to the New World to see his family. When he finally gets home, he finds that his village is wiped out. But not only that, almost every Native American Indian on the East Coast has either died of diseases or been slaughtered or fled out of the way. His village is gone completely. So he's solitary for about a year, just surviving off the land, completely upset, and then stumbles in by accident a group of starving Englishmen who are trying to make a colony in a place that they called Plymouth. Now, this is key, and this is where it all comes full circle. Let's put this in perspective. You've got this guy Squanto, who's got diddly squat. He's on his own. He bumps into a load of English people who are starving. He knows English people because he speaks English. He's a Native American, so he knows how to plant crops and help people to survive on the land. And that became Thanksgiving. It's a true story.
What are the odds of that?
Nobody else in the country, apart from this group of Brits and this one guy, at the best of it, is found himself a horse and a dog. So you just can't write those stories.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing as right now. I mean, you cannot write this. It's just impossible to think that this was going to be happening. However, it is just, in a way, we have to consider ourselves lucky, even though possibly at this point it's not really something like that, because there's generations that haven't really lived into so much craziness. We are seeing it live, developing. This is a real life soap opera, which we have no clue how it's going to end.
But it's not the first time. Let's look at something else. I'll just mention a couple of things. What's the most famous movie of all time that everybody watches again and again and again? The lovely Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and it's about a 12-hour love story involving a boat and an iceberg.
Titanic.
Titanic, the unsinkable ship, that it doesn't matter what you do, it's the safest ship ever built. Oops, what happened to that? Let's throw in another story. The Three Musketeers and all the stuff that happened with King Louis XIV. King Louis XIV did a lot of things that made him very unpopular, but one thing that ended up coming back to bite him in the neck was his design for a guillotine that could be painless and quick and less messy than having a guy with a big axe is waiting just to chop everybody. And guess who it got used on? The king. He couldn't have measured it better himself. But then you got modern versions of this, Ernesto. And right now, the one saving grace, apart from the internet maybe, and also Zoom, is Netflix and the other streaming companies. Now, let's take us back to 1985. In 1985, Blockbuster opened their very first store. Now, Blockbuster, only you and I are old enough to remember what Blockbuster was. Nobody else will know. They were basically, well, do you want to explain who Blockbusters was?
Yeah, well, it was the predecessor from Netflix. I mean, they were shops, and you used to have a ID card, and you just go there and spend 3-4 hours inside the shop trying to decide which movie were you going to watch, and then you will pay and you will take it back. And the reason why they didn't work was because of the late fees. So basically, what Netflix came up with was, you know, why don't we do it by mail, and we don't charge any late fees? And then they went to try to sell it to his name was Hausenga, Dave Hausenga, because it was one of the big success stories in the 1980s. And he said, no, you know what? I mean, we have shops all over the world. We are own the market. There's no reason why for us to try something else. And guess what happens? Within a few years, they went out of business.
Completely. He tried to sell Netflix to Blockbuster for $50 million. They, at the time, were worth billions. And at the time, they had 60,000 employees, 9,000 stores, and around the world, everyone saw them as the name for movies. And therefore, you look at it now, and Netflix owns the roost. And if only they'd thought about it different, but this is not an isolated incident. Think about the original mobile phones. Here we are with an iPhone, nice touch screen. But do you remember when everybody had a BlackBerry, and BlackBerry meant business phone? Yeah. And it was designed, I believe, by Apple, or was it, I think it was Apple, who designed the touch screen and said to BlackBerry, would you like this design? And they said, no, people like to touch phones. They like the spinning ball. It feels very, very tenacious for them to have it. So no, we don't want some blank screen. And history is still biting them.
Yeah.
Because now it's an iPhone or a Samsung and not a button anywhere.
Yeah, it's insane. I think it is just incredibly important that we see every single thing which is happening. Once again, as we keep on saying, try to see the context, try to see the content, try to understand what is going on. Don't get too emotionally attached to everything which is happening, because history is being written as we speak right now. And Dave, we have no clue what we're going to be talking about next time. I mean, we're going to be doing a flash because, of course, we're going to be talking about the debate of Kamala Harris and Vice President Biden. However, we have no idea what's going to be happening from now till tomorrow. So I think it's very important that we keep on watching. We try to have a good perspective.
Let me just share with you one thing. And as a speaker, it's been one of my favorite speeches of all time about Steve Jobs at Harvard, because this is where it all comes together. And also, I think it'll also interest people to see what's coming next. So Steve Jobs has got this incredible speech for 15 minutes speaking at Harvard, and it's seen by the world as one of the best speeches ever made. And it's made in 3 stages, and he explains it in 3 stages. And every speech he ever made was in 3 stages. So the first story is about this young boy of his baby who was going to be given away by his mother because she couldn't afford to look after it. But she would give it away only to a couple who promised to send him to university. So the couple that adopted young Steve Jobs promised to do that to his mother, took him away, but couldn't afford to send him necessarily to university. But they scraped and saved and managed to get him into Brown. I think it was Brown. So he went to university, started studying, dropped out, got bored, as many people, including yours truly, did. And while he's bored, he's surviving by collecting Coke bottle tops and selling them and just going into classes that interested him. So he went into art classes, he went into calligraphy classes, he went into a whole load of different things. Now, calligraphy is the art of drawing fonts. Lots of big ornate fonts, little ones. He studied it, he's an art guy, he kind of found it interesting. And then he went on to create history of the Apple, Macintosh, and Pixar, and all the rest of it. But go back a couple of years when we first discovered making personal computers. In those days, and you remember them as well, Ernesto, it was a green screen which would have this dot that moved along. And that was a game in itself, going, look, it's moving, you can write my name on it, woohoo! And as a designer of a computer, they said, right, what should we do with this dot? What should we do with how we write it? And Steve Jobs said, have you considered calligraphy? I know all these fonts that I learned when I was at university. Let's try these on this new computer. And that's how we have all the fonts that we're looking at right now, that we're writing messages around the world, because life does come full circle. We only are doing this show because of a coronavirus forcing us to go into lockdown. So before we take a break, we should throw to everybody what benefits and what things are going to come up in your history as a direct result of the choices that you're making right now. And are you the little boy that cried wolf, or are you the wolf that went, ooh, sheep, let's have a great opportunity here?
That's a great, great analogy and a great, great question. And it is true. I mean, if it would not have been because of the coronavirus, we would have just continued doing what we were doing. We would have never gotten into broadcasting. Right now, broadcasting is opening new doors for us. It's showing us a new way forward. And this has all happened because of COVID-19. So every single this stressful situation has an opportunity with you.
Well, one thing we didn't expect to happen though, Ernesto, is over the course of time of 8 months of working together, every couple of days doing a broadcast, you and I are turning into each other. We got the glasses, we got the beard, we got the black shirt. It's only a matter of time. But you know what? If it's going to turn into anybody, it's going to be you or Roger Whittaker. I'm happy with you.
That's good. Okay, guys. Well, leave us your comments. Let us know what you think. I hope that you have enjoyed the show. I think we have given you a lot of food for thought, a lot of great information, Dave, you put together for this show. And we look forward to seeing you on the next news flash of the Toilet Paper Diaries, or next week on the next episode of the Toilet Paper Diaries. Hey,
we'll see you soon.
By the way, we are actually having 75 episodes. Oh my God.
Wow, who could have imagined? We never expected that to happen, so we should celebrate. But the thing is that, Ernesto, let's not plan anything because we have no idea what's going to happen between now and the next show. Yeah. Let's just hold on to the furniture and make sure there's not an earthquake or an asteroid that arrives early between now and then. It's the Toilet Paper Diaries, guys. Stay cool. Guys.
Bye-bye.
The Toilet Paper Diaries was created by Dave Crane and Ernesto Verdugo, two international keynote speakers who saw the world go into lockdown because of a coronavirus and realized that many, many people would be scared. Not just speakers or event organizers, but anybody who owned their own business and was wondering what they need to do next to make sure that they could look after their families and still earn money. For 50 days consecutively without missing a single show, Dave and Ernesto shared ideas and tips and tools and techniques. They had a lot of fun, had a lot of jokes, and brought in some of the biggest speakers from the industry to join in.
Hey Dave, hey Ernesto.
Hello Dave and Ernesto. This is Michael Dieterich coming to you live from the Netherlands.
This is Ethna Trainer in Dubai.
Thanks for inviting me back. You can see my reflection.
Hi Dave. Hi Ernesto.
John Briggs here with another brief bulletin for you.
Hope you guys are staying well. And congratulations on 50 amazing episodes.
They're sharing great content from thought leaders, speakers and authors around the globe.
I appreciate the opportunity to be able to deliver this message to you today.
This is exactly the kind of content people really need.
And thank you both so much for the daily dose of positivity that you are sharing with the world.
Congratulations for organizing this Celebration 50.
What a fabulous accomplishment.
What an incredible show. Thank you for adding value for all of us.
Well done.
Congratulations on 50 shows.
That's impressive.
Congratulations.
You guys are doing fantastic work.
And you do it in such a humorous way.
Make sure you keep doing what you're doing. It's very, very important.
Congratulations to your 50th episode.
Kudos on the show. So proud of you. I've been a fan for a long time.
Congratulations on the success of your show.
What a great idea.
Really nice to see you guys.
Last time I seen you guys, it was 5 years ago in speaking in Dubai.
I miss you guys. I remember all the great times we had working with businesses in the UAE and Bahrain.
Just keep blessing people and keep sharing your gift.
Stay safe, and I'll see you around the quad.
Thank you all you've been doing. It's been great watching these reports from all over the world.
And thank you both for all that you're doing. This is amazing stuff. Giving back during this tough time.
You look fantastic.
And now, when people are starting to come out of their homes, now it's time to fast forward. Are you ready for the Toilet Paper Diaries, Season 2?